Hello and welcome to another episode of Develop with WP. My name is Bobby and today we're going to finish up this Ajax request that we've been working on over the last couple of videos. And in this video we're really going to focus on the server side of things and actually take the data that the Ajax request sent us and actually save that data to the database. So let's get started. The first thing we need to do is jump over to WP job settings, which is our settings page. And we need to create a new function. Get a little bit of space here. Alright, and we're going to call this function DWP save reorder. And then we're going to do an add action, so nothing crazy yet. But here's where it does get a little different. Instead of actually calling a hook, a predefined action hook, we're going to use what's called a dynamic hook. And this dynamic hook is going to start with WP underscore Ajax. So this is always like this, WP underscore Ajax. And then the next part of this hook call is actually going to be the action that we defined in our Ajax request. So save sort. By the way, I think I had this as save post earlier and I've changed it to save sort. Just makes more sense. But anyway, whatever we define this action as, for example, here we saved it as save sort. In our function, it's going to be WP underscore Ajax underscore save sort. And then, like always, the function to be called will be this function. So this is the magic. Let me repeat it one more time. You create a function, you do an add action, and then you call WP underscore Ajax, and then the next part of this slug is whatever you defined as the action in the Ajax request. And then lastly, what happens then is that when this action hook gets called, it knows it's linked to that Ajax request, and then it calls your function. So that's what ties this function to this Ajax request. Now, that's a really key point, so make sure you understand that, and if not, watch this video a few more times until you kind of get that connection. So to bring this all home, let's just do something really quick in this function. We're just going to call something called WP send JSON error. This is a function that's built into WordPress, hence the WP. And if I send it just like this, it's simply going to send a JSON response to our Ajax request. And it's going to send a success value that's equal to false. But you can also pass in something into it. So for here, I'm going to pass in a string, something very fitting like you suck. Okay? So let's go try this out. Let's see if it's working. Alright, so if I refresh and I drag and reorder, we see we still get the save request. But if I go look at the network tab, let me see if I can fit this all on the screen. And we click on this admin Ajax, this is the request, you can see that we get a success equals false and we get data equals you suck. So this is showing that while this thing is still showing the success, we actually do have this function set up. And it's worth reiterating really quick too, if you're wondering why we're still getting this like you saved this successfully, I touched on this in the Ajax video, but this success and failure message that we have set up right now is a very low level check. It's simply checking whether or not this Ajax request was successfully sent, and in this case it is successfully sent. What we're going to do as we build out this saving function is we're going to be sending various success and error messages with this function to the application, and at the end of this video we're actually going to update these functions right here to be more accurate. So let's continue. So the first thing we want to do in our save function is we want to check the nonce. You remember we localized the nonce here, called WP job order, and then we've passed that under a security variable within our Ajax request. So we want to check that. And WordPress has a very helpful function called check Ajax refer. All right, and this function you can use it in a number of different ways. In our use case, we need to pass it two parameters. The first thing we need to pass it is the actual JSON or actual nonce that we created, WP job order. And then the second thing we need to pass it is the variable that we defined over here when we passed it, which was security. All right, and what we want to do though is we want to wrap this in a conditional statement. So if not check Ajax refer, we want to do something. So we're saying if this does not check out, so if the nonce is not valid, so if not check Ajax refer, if the nonce is not valid, then we want to send an error message and end this. So we're going to do return WP and we want this error to say something somewhat useful. So return WP send JSON error. So if the nonce doesn't check out, throw an error. We're going to do another security check, which is if. In this one, we're going to check whether or not the user has the right credentials to even be able to do this. And a common way to do this is to do a not current user can. So if not current user can is a check to see whether or not a person like has a certain level of access, like administrator or editor. But it's actually more than that. We're not really checking to see whether or not they have the right role. We're checking to see whether or not they have the right capability. And if we look in WordPress, there's a whole list of the capabilities. And you can see that an administrator has all these different capabilities. And the one we're going to use is called manage options. So pretty much this statement is saying if you're not able to manage options, you're not able to do this, whatever this is. And again, we're going to return another JSON error. But this time we'll put something different. Let's see. I don't know, something that could be done better. All right, let's continue on. The next thing we want to check, or actually we're done checking. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start the actual save method. So at this point we know that this is a valid check and that the person is able to do this. Now we feel comfortable letting someone save something to the database. So we're going to create a variable called order, and it's going to be equal to this variable called order. So this post variable, this is a super global that's available to us from the Ajax request, and you'll work with these types of variables on any type of like form submission or anything like that. It's a super global that's built into PHP that gets sent to you, and then it's an array of a whole bunch of items, and it actually consists of, in our case right here, it consists of an order. It consists of this security. These are all the variables, and that's what we're passing in right here. We're saying we want the order parameter of this post variable, which is in our case this. All right, so we're storing this from our JavaScript into a variable. And I meant to show you this earlier in the video, and I didn't. But what is this? What is this? So let's do a console log of this. So let's save. Let's make sure we don't have any errors. Looks good. Let's check it. So you see right here, we console log out 17, 18, 19. And that corresponds with the IDs here, 17, 18, 19. See the order they're in? If I were to Now they're 18, 19, 17. If I go back to the console, now you'll see that they're 18, 19, 17. So what's happening here is, and actually I want to change this up. I'm outputting a string of all the IDs in a certain order. And that's because I'm doing this toString. I actually want to get rid of this. And you'll see why here shortly. So let's get rid of that. And let's do this one more time. Now you see that I'm getting an array. So what's happening? It turns out that this jQuery sortable has a number of methods that you can call on it, and one of them is called toArray. And what toArray does is it takes all of the items within the sortable element, in this case all of our LIs, and it pulls out the IDs that we specified earlier. So it's simply pulling these out, and it's storing them in an array in the order in which they are, which is perfect for what we'll need, and you'll see why here shortly. So this array that simply exists, that consists of 17, 19, and 18, this array is what is getting passed to me in this right here, and that's what I'm storing here. So if we were to look at order, we would see this exact same array in this exact same order. That's what's happening here. The next thing we're going to do is create one more variable. We're going to make it equal to 0. And this counter is going to be used because we're going to loop through this array, and then we're going to execute our saving function as we loop through this array. So let's do that. Creating a for each loop. Oh, that's not what I want. And in this for each loop, we're going to say order as $item underscore ID. So we're saying we're passing in the orders array, and for each one of those, each item in the orders array, it's going to get saved into a temporary variable called item ID. And then we're going to take and do our saving. So we're going to do WP update post. WP update post is what allows us, we can pass it an ID and a whole bunch of information. It could be anything that's savable to a post, like a title, the main content area, an excerpt, whether it's published or not, all that kind of stuff. We can actually, as long as we pass in an ID, we can send WP update post with all that data, and it'll actually update the post. But what we're going to do to make this a little more clean is we're going to create one more variable called post. It's going to be equal to an array. And we're going to save all of that, all the data that we're going to pass into here, we're going to save in this post array. So it just makes it a little bit cleaner. And we're only going to be passing two things. We're going to pass the ID, which I said you need to update these posts. And the ID is going to be equal to this item ID. Whoops. Right? Because this item ID is the actual IDs of these posts. And we're actually going to typecast this to make sure that it isn't. By putting int here, we're just ensuring that this is a number and not a string. So if you see right here, it's passing it as a string. And we don't want that. We need this to be an actual number, because WP update post is expecting it to be a number. And then the next thing we're going to pass is menu order. I mentioned this earlier, but this is the whole key to the whole thing. The menu order is the order in which these posts were created. Thus, that's why they're getting output in the order that they're getting output in. So if we change the menu order to reflect the new order, they'll always stay in this order. And the menu order is going to be equal to counter. All right. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do counter plus plus. So let's walk through this one more time. We're storing all the data, all the IDs for each of these items, the actual IDs that relate to their post, because when we did this up here, we called for the ID for each LI, we did the ID. So this is the actual ID for this post in the database. And we're passing those right here via the Ajax call. That data is coming in this post variable. We're storing that in a local variable called order. We're creating a counter called 0. And then we're running a loop. And the ID is getting parsed out of this array into its own variable called item ID. And so when the first time this runs, the ID here in our example is going to be 17. So right here, this would be 17. And then the menu order is going to be 0. So that means that this item 17, which is the first in the list, will now have the first menu order of all the job listings, and it'll be the first one. Then it's going to take that data, update that post. It's going to take the counter and it's going to increment it. That's what plus plus does, to where now counter equals 1. The second time this runs through, now it's going to have an ID of 19. It's going to pass that in as the ID, and it's going to set the menu order to 1, which is the new value for counter. And now it's going to save number 19, post item ID number 19, as menu order number 1, and so forth and so on. And that's how that's going to work. So let's see if we have this working. Let's refresh. I have an error, 75. I forgot my semicolon. All right, the moment of truth. So we're going to move this one down. We get our success. It says 1, 2, 3. Now when we refresh, these should stay in the same order. And they do, 1, 2, 3. So now we successfully have this saving. And that's great. The last step that we need to do, and I mentioned this, is that we need to go back into our JavaScript and we need to start utilizing these WP send JSON errors and successes, which we haven't even put the success, have we? Let's do that really quick. At the end of this, we need to run a success. So WP send JSON success. Oops, that's not what I want. It's really late at night, just so everybody knows. All right, post saved. So naturally, once we get to this point in our code, we have successfully saved. So let's go and use these variables in our JavaScript. So what we need to do is in the success function, we need to do our conditional checks for these errors within the success function. And the reason we're doing them only in the success function is because this Ajax request, whether they save or not, as we've mentioned, it's always going to run. So no matter what, whether or not we save a variable or not, this success function is always going to run. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to create a conditional statement. If true equals the response dot success, which is that variable I showed you earlier. I don't know if I can show it to you now. No, I can't show it to you right now. But that's the variable. So what WP send JSON success is sending a success equals true. So we're just checking if it is true, then output this success div. If not, then it means something went wrong and we need you to output this error. All right, so let's check this out. Go to the console, refresh. We don't have any errors. We're going to take 3 all the way to the top. There was an error saving the sort. You do not have the proper permissions. That's weird. Hang on a second. I must have typoed something. Success was spelled wrong. All right, so let's try this again. We get, yay, it's saved. And you saw the error message worked because I didn't have a success message, so it didn't have anything else to send it. One other check that we can do is we can actually take this nonce and just make it some random numbers, which, I mean, it's a 1 in a million that it would work. Save it, refresh, and now you can see that there was an error saving your sort order and you do not have the proper permission. So you can see that we're getting an error message. And it's not actually allowing us to save. So that's good. That's what we want to see. Let me go back and fix this. Save it. So there you have it. We have successfully created a saving function which has some security parameters in place, which then once those have been satisfied, allows us to run our saving function where we're updating the menu order, which is the order in which they're being output. And we're also sending these success and error messages, which we have now used to update our success function so that we now actually, so now when we actually drag and drop one of these, I gotta refresh. This save function is a real success function. It means not only did the Ajax succeed, but so did the saving of the post. And likewise, when we get the error message, it could be because the Ajax failed, or it could be because of something didn't save properly. If we really wanted to, we could come in here and make these be two separate failure messages, but I'm not really worried about it right now. So that is it. Ajax is done. I hope you enjoyed this part of the series. I'm not sure what's next. We still have a lot more I wanted to cover within this plugin series, but so I'll be looking into what's going to be next, so definitely tune in for that. But again, thanks for watching this video. Have a great evening, and I'll talk to you later.